Welcome to Numbers Simplified. In this channel, we seek to simplify and solve numerical problems. We're still continuing with our financial mathematics series, and today we'll be talking about loan prepayment or curtailment, or better known as a principal reduction. And take note, this is part 10. Make sure to check out all the other parts prior to this part. Now, these are terms that are used to refer to an additional but partial irregular payment made to reduce a loan balance which may reduce the interest costs. So at times, these terms, loan prepayment, curtailment, principal reduction, can be used interchangeably. So ideally, a loan, let's say L dollars, at an interest rate of R% per annum compounded I periods or a period a year for N years. If we are going to represent that payment using a timeline, we would have something of this nature where at time zero, you get a loan worth L dollars, and then you're expected to repay back the loan after N years. So there is a process of repayment. So after N years, the loan's value will be worth something simply because it would comprise of the interest. So I know that this channel is a mathematical channel, but I saw it fit that we cover some of these concepts. So in this session, we are basically going to talk about the terminology used and also, of course, the formula. However, we are going to cover some examples in the following sessions. So it is important that we get everything right and we also master the terminology starting from the grassroots so that when we come to the examples, we know exactly what we are dealing with. So now with that, we know that the value of the loan, that is after N years, will be worth LV. That is to say, using the formula, the value of the loan will be L, the original or the principal loan, times 1 plus R over I times N times the periods, number of periods. So that would give us the value of the loan. And I encourage you to check out all the other parts, especially prior to this one, part 8 and part 9, where we covered the use of this formula. This is going to be crucial and beneficial so that we understand the loan, not just in the current moment, but also when it is due, because we also need to know the value of that particular loan when it is due. However, if there is an additional amount repaid, say for instance, P1, after T1 periods, in order for us to clear the loan to reduce the interest costs, then we may need to consider the timeline. So we are going to have two methods that are going to be crucial in understanding how this idea of paying an additional amount in order to start clearing the loan prior to the day it is due, because in so doing, we reduce the interest costs. So what happens is at the end of the period the loan is due, we would incur less interest costs. So method 1, we are saying that we have the loan L at time 0, which is going to have a certain value when it is due at time t. That is to say, t would be the number of periods. So not just the years, but the periods times the years, because that would give us the total periods. And at the end of the total period, this is the time when the loan is due, we are going to have the value of the loan being LV dollars. So if we make a payment at time T1, rather, I wouldn't want us to look at it as time, but period, because it could be 3 months. If it is, say, a loan that is compounded monthly, the interest rate per annum. So we are going to have it perhaps as anything. So T1 here would be the period in which we decide to pay an additional amount so that we try to reduce the value of the loan when it is due so that we also incur less interest costs. So if we pay P1 in order to sort of reduce the value of the loan, we are going to also have that amount that we have paid being worth something at the end of the time the loan is due. That is to say that P1 after the T periods, we are going to have that having its own value. So meaning that it would actually reduce the value of the loan at the time it is due. So now that is what we have over here. So in this timeline, we see that P1 would also accumulate some interest in as much as it was just worth P1 at the time it was paid, but it is going to accumulate interest up until the time the loan is due. So meaning that the balance of the loan to be repaid, let's call it BV, is going to be LV, which is the original value of the loan at the period when it is due, minus the payment value. So the payment value comes from the payment we made in between the periods P1, which is going to accumulate some interest so that we get the value, the balance of the loan being less than that which it was supposed to be. So now if we consider the formula, we are going to have, so we know for LV is given to be L times 1 plus R over I raised to the power NI minus the payment value. So we paid P1, but that P1 is going to accumulate some interest for the period that is left. So that's why we have NI. So that NI can actually be the capital letter T minus the T1, because we know that our payment would not accumulate interest from the time the loan was given, but from the time it was paid. And remember, we paid it in between after the loan had been given to us. Right, so that is the formula that we would have that would give us the balance that is due. So that is the first method. Now, when it comes to the second method, so both methods would take us to the same thing. However, we are saying that each and every method works a little bit differently, but it's the same thing. So now for the second method, we get the loan at time 0, and that loan would be a loan that would keep in mind for now, knowing that at time T1, we make a payment that is meant to clear the loan. So not really clearing the loan, but to reduce the value of the loan. So in our case, we are going to have the balance at T1. So we know that the loan that was issued was worth L dollars, but up until the period T1, the value of the loan would accumulate. So the loan would accumulate interest up until T1, and at T1, we make a payment. So that is going to reduce the value of the loan at T1. Then that particular value of the loan that is left would accumulate interest till the end of the period T. So that is the logic that we're using. Therefore, the balance of loan to be repaid, BV, is going to be LV1, that is to say, the value of the loan at time T1 minus the payment that we made at T1, because that is the value of the loan at T1. So we subtract at T1, we get the value of the loan that is left, or the balance of the loan. Then with that, we are going to find what it will be worth from T1 to T. And then we are going to just multiply with the interest. And take note, 1 plus r over I raised to the power ni minus t1, because this is the value from the time we make the payment up until the end, or when the loan is due. So that is how we would get the balance to be repaid. So in a nutshell, if we are going to substitute for the LV1 and the P1, we know that P1 is that same amount. There's nothing that happens to it. We just have it as P1. But the LV1, which is the value of the loan at time T1, is that which we have there. And take note of the time, T1 times I, because we are saying that the period times, rather the years times the periods. So we can have it as just T1 instead of T1 times 1, because it's the number of periods that we have. Then that would be what would give us the answers that we are looking for. So stay tuned as we look at some examples that will help us.